Before the Rings of Power, there were the Silmarils. Before Sauron, there was his master Morgoth. Before Aragorn and Arwen, there was Beren and Luthien. Join us as we explore Tolkien and all the ages of Middle-earth with your hosts from theonering.com, Jonathan Watson and Michael Grumbine.
Good morning, afternoon, evening. Evening. That's when we're recording this. Good evening, everybody. Welcome.
Hey.
And for those of you waiting, no, we're not doing Tom Bombadil today yet. We're not talking about the removal of Tom Bombadil from the films yet. I think that's coming next week. And I think we're going to dedicate a whole episode to it.
Can't wait for the yellow and blue.
Especially in the Rings of Power. We'll see. They say he's going to be in it. This will be fun.
Tom Bombadil's nearly impossible to pull off cinematically in the first place. The fact that Rings of Power is going to try to do that, or we guess that they're going to try to do that.
They couldn't fit him They couldn't fit Tom Bombadil into what Tolkien actually wrote, so we're just going to fit him in what he didn't write and just throw him in somewhere somehow into something that doesn't make sense. Okay,
I swear,
I don't want to.
If they try to make him non-binary, I'm going to throw something.
Well, he's wearing a blue and yellow. I mean, come on. He just needs to add red and green, and we're almost halfway there to him being an ally. Anyway, sorry to bring everybody down for that. This week we're going to be going over two other changes, and you might be like, well, what's the difference? Well, we're going to get into that, but one is the removal of the Old Forest, and the other is the removal of Old Man Willow and the injection of that into the extended editions in Fangorn, essentially. So we're going to talk about that, jump into it. And before we do that, though, we did bring up two things last week, that we had some discussion on in Discord regarding, well, first, let me talk first. We talked about how does Gandalf get his staff back after he's in Orthanc and Saruman grabs it? Well, we have Fra, who does our awesome videos and helps us with when we need cool stuff to look good on the big screen right here. We have him who decided to point out that these staffs are actually different between Orthanc and Rivendell, and we have the imagery to prove it.
Okay.
I'm going to have to bring this up on the screen. Sorry, everybody. 1 second. Here we go. Do I really cut this out? I don't think so. So we go.
Well,
right.
And while you're doing that, let me point out that I can't remember us saying one way or another. Did we say he didn't change staffs, or did we just not?
We were like, wait, how does he get his staff back? I don't remember. So that's what we were asking. So here is what Fra posted. This is his staff prior to Orthanc, prior to being rescued on Orthanc. This is the one that Saruman took, which you can see, like, if you look at the top, it's not quite as, it doesn't have as many serifs on it. Can you tell I work in design stuff? It doesn't have any many little like things hanging off the end.
What's that nail?
Okay. Nose ring? I don't know. That's a good question. I don't know where he got
Gandalf's nose ring.
Witchking.com. It's probably something.
Does it hold his hat into his hair?
I have no idea. That's really weird. All right, so that's it. And then we look at this next one, and you can see this one has more of that sort of like a long tail at the top or something like that, right? The root that sticks out from the top. I don't know what to call it, but yeah, there's a slight difference to it, and maybe you can see it. If I zoom in a little bit more here at the bottom, you can kind of see.
I see. Yeah, technically different, pretty similar, but technically different. So yeah. So some poor branch in Rivendell got cut down to make that second one, I guess, because that was.
I guess I don't know. I mean, I guess Fra posted that the Orthanc stamps are slightly different but designs, implying he probably got a new one once he reached Rivendell. So
right. But also those look like staves, like old staves. So maybe the elves have a winter
the storehouse
supply of staves for again. He's always losing them and again like, coming back and
wait.
Right, another one.
You need another staff that fits your pipe. You know how hard those are to get? The ones that slide right in? That's like impossible again. Oh, come on.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's point number one. That was good to know. I've never noticed that before because nobody ever made a point of that before anywhere else that I've ever seen or even cared to think about. Okay, the other one that we had a little, I guess you could say, pushback on, not friendly pushback here in our Discord chat, which you can get to, by the way, by going to theonering.com/member, become a member. It's $4 a month. The first month is free, or go to theonering.com/Patreon where you can become a member, and it's $5 a month, and the first 7 days are free.
Nice transition there.
Whoa. All right. But if you do that, you get access to our Discord. You get access to our extended podcast where we'll answer a few questions from the folks here, including more discussion about evil in Middle-earth, since we're talking about Old Man Willow, as well as the sense of forests in Middle-earth and why are there so many evil forests in Middle-earth? But yeah, go to thewondering.com/member, become a member so you can hear that. You can watch it on YouTube in our special hidden YouTube link that nobody knows except for those people in Discord, which, look, they're right here. They're right there. Anyway, so we got another point about fainting hobbits. So you made the point, Michael, that the hobbits, or at least we got the fainting hobbit when it comes to, Bree, right? Is it Pippin or is it Merry? Now I can't remember. Who goes
Pippin.
out? Pippin, right? Okay, so Pippin goes out. He faints when he sees the witch.
When he gets near a Nazgul. I don't know if it's the witch.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah. So, but Farmer Maggot stands up to the Nazgul and essentially he threatens him by saying, "I'll stick my dogs on you." But Mandy pointed out that Gaffer doesn't faint when he's spoken to by a Black Rider, and that's true. And here's what was written, and I believe this is what Frodo heard over the hedge. Is that right? One voice was certainly. This is from the chapter. I think it's the first chapter of the book. I can't remember. It's page 69 in my copy here. One voice was certainly the old Gaffer's. The other was strange and somehow unpleasant. He could not make out what it said, but he heard the Gaffer's answers, which were rather shrill. The old man seemed put out. "No, Mr. Baggins has gone away. Went this morning, and my Sam went with him. Anyway, all his stuff went. Yes, sold out and gone. I tell you, why? Why, it's none of my business or yours. Where to? That ain't no secret. He's moved to Buckleberry or some such place away down yonder. Yes, it is a tidy way. I've never been so far myself. They're queer folks in Buckland. No, I can't give no message. Good night to you." It's funny, right? The queer folks in Buckland and essentially Farm Maggot said the same thing about those in Hobbiton. So, yeah.
Very, very insular. We think people nowadays are insular sometimes. This is literally your same part. It's the Shire, but it's just a different part of the Shire.
Yeah. So yes, Farmer Maggot, he stands up to him, he sticks him on, but he's not, he doesn't faint like Pippin faints, but neither does the Gaffer.
Right. And I like Maddie's point, which is that it's probably a kind of projection where the Nazgul is withholding some of its presence or something, or not exerting its will anyway, in order to dominate, because it's trying to get answers to its questions, and it wouldn't do any good if hobbits were just fainting left and right as it moved through the Shire. It would make a funny theater scene, perhaps, but not very useful to the Nazgul's purpose. So, great point, Mandy. And what I would say is that, because I got to defend my man, Farmer Maggot. What I would say is that at the point when the Nazgul realizes that it's not going to get what he wants, I doubt that it's. In fact, I would be willing to bet that at that moment it's probably not withholding any of its presence anymore. It's probably just fine to dominate him and get this hobbit out of the way, and maybe not exerting the black breath specifically. I don't know if I don't know. It just never, Tolkien doesn't give us enough information, I don't think, to know whether the black breath is something that's used like an offensive weapon on purpose, or whether it's just an aura. If it isn't, either way, they are withholding it. If it's an aura, they're withholding it in normal questioning of hobbits. Yeah. And I doubt they would continue to care for a Maggot, and yet he still calls the dogs and opposes the Nazgul. So even in adversity against the Nazgul, he is not. He's not cowed.
No, he's not. And then again, of course, also Merry doesn't faint when he attacks the Witch King. But that's a totally different situation at that point too. Like, he's grown so much, he's drunk water from Fangorn Forest, right? There's some serious changes in him between.
Well, he's faced death and Balrogs and all kinds of warg spirits and all kinds of other nasty evils. He is a toughened and
He's been captured by Uruks. I mean, so
much changed Hobbit from when he left the Shire. So I don't think it's a comparable situation.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so let's get into then the first change we're talking about. Number, I believe we're on 33. Yeah, 33. Wow, 33. This is, what are we calling this one, Michael? You came up with a good one. Sorry. The forest
that wasn't.
Oh yeah, okay. So see, there's nothing there because it really wasn't. So it's.
I see what you did there, sir. I see what
screen.
you did.
So for those of you listening, I just put up a black screen, not a video, because there's nothing there.
Jonathan's being very clever, sir. So, and here we're getting into an issue that we'll have for the next number of changes, which is literally the change was they removed it.
Yeah,
now, there's a slight exception for Old Man Willow, as we'll get into, but with regard to Tom Bombadil, with regard to the Barrow Downs, with regard to the Old Forest, and mostly with regard to Old Man Willow, they just aren't there. With regard to Goldberry, just not there. So we're going to approach this a little differently, or at least I am, which is that when we get to our questions about it, I'm going to try to give an analysis of, was it A, necessary for cinematic purposes, and B, was it, when I'm looking at whether it's lore friendly, I'm going to look at whether removal of that element handicaps your story from a lore perspective, because obviously by definition, anytime you remove it, it's against the lore if you remove a chunk of the book. But I don't think that's fair for this kind of analysis. I think we want to look at something more deeply than just that. And so I'd like to look at the story and how each of those impacts the story.
Well, so what is the primary way that its removal then for you impacts the story? Just of the Old Forest part, not all the way up through Tom Bombadil and Old Man Willow, but just
right.
What does that impact?
So for the Old Forest, I want to give a quote, and this is when the hobbits have first ventured into the Old Forest and they're heading for Bonfire Glade, and they're first feeling the oppression of the forest. So I need to point out that for Tolkien, the forest is a living thing, and it's full of living things, and the things that are living, the trees especially, have a will that trees in our world do not. And so there's a great number of pages. Tolkien, it's interesting if you start analyzing how much time Tolkien spends given different things, and you look at something like he spends about as much time describing the Old Forest as he does the entire fight with the Balrog and everything in all the martial elements in Moria, which is quite a bit. So Tolkien, that tells me two things. One, he cares deeply about the atmosphere of his story, and he secondarily cares very deeply about trees. He was a great lover of trees, and we can see that, of course, from Fangorn and Treebeard and the Ents. But we see it first in the Old Forest. I'm going to read a passage quickly from that first, when the four hobbits are traveling through the forest. The ground was rising steadily, and as they went forward, it seemed that trees became taller, darker, and thicker. There was no sound except an occasional drip of moisture falling through the still leaves. For the moment, there was no whispering or movement among the branches, but they all got an uncomfortable feeling that they were being watched with disapproval, deepening to dislike and even enmity. The feeling steadily grew until they found themselves looking up quickly or glancing back over their shoulders as if they expected a sudden blow. There was not as yet any sign of a path, and the trees seemed constantly to bar their way. Pippin suddenly felt he could not bear it any longer, and without warning let out a shout. "Oi! Oi!" he cried. "I'm not going to do anything. Just let me pass through, will you?" The others halted, startled, but the cry fell as if muffled by a heavy curtain. There was no echo or answer, though the woods seemed to become more crowded and more watchful than before. "I should not shout if I were you," said Merry. "It does more harm than good." So what you have there is this atmospheric setting where Tolkien's introducing us to the concept of a deep forest, and a forest that's under no control by any civilization, and it's unfriendly. And as we go on, we find it gets more and more unfriendly. And there's another passage we're going to read a little later on about what Treebeard says, and Merry actually brings up the Old Forest, and Treebeard has a comment about that in the Two Towers. But for starters, let me say that when you take away the Old Forest and everything that happened in it, and I'm going to remove Old Man Willow and Bombadil from this because we're going to do separate ones on those, but just the Old Forest in general, we learn in this chapter that the Old Forest is has enmity between it and the hobbits. Like there was a great kind of battle at the edge of the Old Forest, which is in Buckland, and the hobbits of old burned vast amounts of the forest, and the forest remembers and hates them for it, and so is not friendly at all to these hobbits coming in. So this is no sort of Greenpeace-ish version of nature, where the Tolkien loves the forest. The forest is beautiful and has this life and dignity to it that he will not he will always reference. But it's not a safe place, and it's not. And he get his Old Forest chapter gives us introduction to that idea of dangerous trees, and I think we're much better prepared for Fangorn and understanding Fangorn by our first taste of it in the Old Forest. So what do you think?
I think yes, I agree with all that, and I think what it also does is it's the first unsafe part of the Lord of the Rings. Does that make sense? You're leaving the Shire, right? It's the edge of the Shire. This is the safe spot, and as soon as they hit the hedge, right, the hedge that protects them against the trees that moved up because they were cutting and burning. They all of a sudden, this is now the dangerous world out around them, and so from Crick Hollow to this point, you are now set up to, okay, there's danger out here, and it's not just the Nazgul. There are other things that are creeping in, and I think that general sense. This chapter peaks that even more so even than the Nazgul do, because it's not just a character of a thing or an anthropomorphic thing. It's actually the trees, the land, right? It's moving, the sound, the enclosing, the claustrophobia that they feel. Anyway, so I think that sense of danger, which you pointed out, is when you lose that in here, you lose a large part of leaving the safety of the Shire, because you get from the Shire to Bree in the films, and it feels like no time has passed. And I think I saw that from Hobbiton to Bree, it's about 100 miles, and I think from Hobbiton to the Old Forest is going to be like 20 something miles.
That sounds
so.
Right.
So it's a large distance, and the other thing that you lose by removing this is they hit a point, like they don't know where they're going in a way, right? They get lost in the Old Forest until they hit the Withywindle, and they kind of know where they are then at that point. But the sense of that travel and that it's still dangerous, like you lose so much of that, and that still bothers me so much in the films, is that it feels so short. And I know I've harped on this the last couple of weeks, but I'm going to harp on it again. That you lose that, but then also on the other side of that, you have the fearlessness of the hobbits still, right? They're willing to go through with it. They're not cowed by it, and they're not going to take the more dangerous road. They're going to, they're not going to take the easy road. They're going to, that might expose them to the Nazgul, but they're going to take the more dangerous road, and they're going to have the courage in order to go through that. Even though, and let me see if I can find the quote that I have. I don't know if I highlighted it, but let's see. It was Mary. Where he just answers matter-of-factly about all that sort of stuff about that. And he answers like, oh yeah, about the Old Forest, yeah, everything is in it is very much more alive, more aware of what is going on, so to speak, than things in the Shire. The trees don't like strangers. They watch you. It's not like he's surprised by this. This is common knowledge. Yep. This is well known, right? Yeah, and occasionally the most unfriendly ones may drop a branch or stick a root out or grasp at you with a long trailer, but at night things can be most alarming, or so I'm told. I've only been once or twice after dark, and then only near the hedge. I thought all the trees were whispering to each other, passing news and plots in an unintelligible language, and the branches swayed and groped without any wind. So it's all accepted. Like the danger is there. They knew it, but the Shire was their safe. Where is that Shire for you in your life, Michael? The Shire. To go back to those interview questions that we heard
20 years later.
Yeah.
That the question never dies.
Yeah.
I love what you're saying there. I like the fact that this is our first introduction to the land itself as dangerous, not just in the movie, it's all driven by characters. It's the Nazgul that they're up against, and the Nazgul that they're fleeing from. And in the books, there's so much more richness, both with regard to characters that are left out, like Fatty Bulger and Farmer Maggot, but also the land itself. And we miss out Gildor, Inglorian. but the land itself has its own character, and
Yeah.
even the trees are kind of like a personality in Tolkien's world.
Yeah.
And he's really good at painting that picture and personalizing the forest in a way that we completely miss out on with regard to in the movies.
Yeah, and something we'll talk about more in the extended podcast is all the danger that Frodo and Sam experience in Middle Earth. Correct me if I'm wrong. I'm thinking through it. Comes from Saruman/Sauron, right? That's everything stems from that in the films. Whereas in the books, danger doesn't, like the Barrow Downs, right? That's not Saruman or Sauron. The old Man Willow, that's neither one. Caradhras, that's neither one either. And so you lose a greater sense of danger of the world all around them and the safety that the Shire had for them. So anyway,
I think that's true. There's so many things that are dangerous and have personalities in Tolkien's world, and for the movie, when you slice and dice things down, you just lose some of that. So
yeah, you have to. All right, let's get to our questions then. First one, is it lore friendly? Yeah.
I agree. It's not unfriendly. It's just you just miss a piece, but the way they portray it, it's not as if they have taken anything with the old forest and changed it into something it wasn't. So it's almost not applicable in this case, but sure.
I agree. There's not much more to say about it. It would be hard to make the case that it's changing something dramatically to be lore unfriendly.
Right. They would have to take out, again, my filter is, does its removal remove a crucial piece of the plot that ruins the story or makes the story lore unfriendly? And the answer is no, it doesn't.
Agreed. All right, so does the change make for better cinema? I kind of hate to say it, but yeah, the change does make for better cinema. This is always where, like, it's what I want, but I understand for the films they couldn't have them going through another forest. Now, I wish they would have added something back to make it feel like that 100 miles between Hobbiton and Bree. They would have added something in there to make it the sense of distance was there. Whether that was going to Crick Hollow, whether that was more time spent on the path and meeting multiple Nazgul, whether it was adding Farmer Magnet, something else. They could have added this. So I've said no before. Like I think there are other removals that are like Farmer Maggot. I think he would have been a great character, but I think there's enough here where you could say, yeah, they didn't really need this in the film.
Totally agree. I focus on the word cinema. This is what this question is all about. Cinema is not literature. And so from cinematic purposes, because you're trying to make a movie, it does make for better cinema because it would have made the movie unnecessarily long. If they had chosen a different format and we had as we've oft discussed, the 10 episode seasons per book, that would be, then they wouldn't have had to do that. And so they could have got a lot of great mileage out of the Old Forest.
Agreed. All right. So how much do you like the change? What do you think, Michael?
Average is 3.0 on this. Because it's better for cinema and because this is not an egregious change. It just lacks. You miss out on some of the atmospheric elements that we mentioned. I'm just going to go flat 3.0 on this. I don't have much of an opinion. It isn't like it's egregious to me, and it isn't like I like it. It's just it's right down the middle.
Yeah. This is one where we are in total agreement on pretty much everything here. There's nothing that, like, I don't hate it, I don't love it. It's just kind of it had to be done, and I was fine. If they're going to cut something, I was fine with them cutting the whole Old Forest journey. Was I sad they cut what we'll talk about next, which is Old Man Willow? Yeah, I wish they would have had that in Tom Bombadil in some way, although I understand that. Well, again, anyway, I don't want to get us off path because that will quickly delve into areas we don't need to delve into, and we'll move on from there. All right, so 3. That's right in our average right there. You're a little low, and I'm just a little bit high.
And this is a short one because it's less interesting than some of the other cuts from a characterization perspective, which we are about to go into. One of them.
Yeah. All right, so let's get into the next one. Old Man canceled.
Mary! What's happening?
Earth, dig deep. Drink water. Go to
So that wasn't actually in the Old Forest, and that wasn't actually Old Man Willow. That would be right in Fangorn's and Treebeard's home, I guess, right? Because
Right.
that's a tree right there. So, but what he does do, so what they did is they removed Old Man Willow, and then I guess as a nod to fans, really ultimately, it kind of feels that way because he didn't need the scene. They put it in there for the extended editions, and Fangorn pretty much says what Tom Bombadil says to Old Man Willow. Yeah, so that was their nod, but certainly it removes Old Man Willow as a separate character from Fangorn. So Michael, what do you think of them completely removing Old Man Willow from?
Right. Okay. So Old Man Willow's gone. Well, so you're going to remove the Old Forest. You're going to have to remove Old Man Willow. So just to remind our viewers, or if any viewers that haven't read the books, so Old Man Willow is a tree, one of the core or most important trees in the Old Forest, and through some kind of power that he has, he lures the hobbits to sleep around him, and then starts to swallow them up. Similarly to what you saw there, although a little more graphically in one sense, because like he's in the midst of I think Pippin is half in, half out of the tree. He's like eating Pippin essentially, or trapping him in the books. So it's a lot of he tries to drown Frodo with a root, like pushing him down, puts him to sleep, and pushes him underwater. And Frodo's in this dazed, dreamlike state, so doesn't even struggle. So it's a little bit of a drama, and Old Man Willow is essentially trying to kill the hobbits, and then Tom Bombadil comes along and says many things, and a few of which were the lines that Jackson decided to use for coming out of Treebeard's mouth. So here's what I found interesting: there is a connection. I don't think Jackson already chose to take Old Man Willow out, so there's a connection though between what's going on in the Old Forest and what Fangorn describes as happening, what Treebeard describes as happening in Fangorn, which is of course named after him. He is both Fangorn and Treebeard. So he says, this is Treebeard says in the Two Towers, he says, most of the trees are just trees, of course, but many are half awake. Some are quite wide awake, and a few are, getting entish. That is going on all the time. So just before I continue, he's pointing out that trees actually become Ents. Very interesting in light of the origin of the Ents that we know from the Silmarillion. So it'd be fun to talk about how that works.
Well, I don't think he says they become Ents. They become Entish.
Sure, but they're becoming more like there's a progression. They can clearly get closer and closer to Ents.
Yeah.
Maybe all they get
allies.
Maybe all they get to is the Huorns, but which we talk about later on. Back to Treebeard. When that happens to a tree, you find that some have bad hearts. That sort of thing seems to spread. There used to be some very dangerous parts in this country. There are still some very black patches. Like the Old Forest away to the north, do you mean? Asked Mary. So Mary's remembering their encounter with Old Man Willow and the trees that didn't like them in the Old Forest. Aye, something like, but much worse. I do not doubt there is some shadow of the great darkness lying there still away north, and bad memories are handed down. But there are hollow dales in this land. That now Treebeard's talking about Fangorn. There are hollow dales in this land where the darkness has never been lifted, and the trees are older than I am. So you have a couple things going on there. Treebeard is pointing out that this darkness, it's the darkness that's actually the source of the evil and hatred. And he thinks that if, with whatever darkness Mary is talking about, that's no doubt left over from some of the great darkness, by which I take to mean the great darkness of Morgoth in that time. And then maybe carried on by the Witch King after the defeat. Agmar defeats the Cardolan and Arthedain and Rudauer. And so there's a reality though that they are related. So the darkness that's infecting the trees in the Old Forest is also happening in Fangorn. So the fact that Jackson uses Fangorn trees to swallow the hobbits the way that Tolkien uses the old forest trees, namely Old Man Willow, to swallow hobbits or try to, is very, it's consonant. It's I think it's appropriate in that regard. Now, obviously, you're right that he is also just referencing the books directly and giving an homage for the Tolkien fans who recognize this. This wouldn't have meant anything to people that saw the movie, or the extended editions, I should say, and hadn't read the books, because they wouldn't have recognized the Easter egg, so to speak, referencing the old. But removing Old Man Willow, like the Old Forest, for me, removes a character that is essentially, if you ask me, if you push me on it, I think Old Man Willow is a Huorn. I think he's a tree that's got about as entish as it could get, and has a black heart, and so he dislikes and hates hobbits and men and other creatures like that. Ultimately, he's under the mastery of the lordship of the Old Forest that sits within Tom Bombadil, so he's not, he's able to be, hobbits are able to be easily saved from him. But he's kind of like the focal point of that malice that we spoke about with the last change about removing the Old Forest. He is personified the anger of the Old Forest against the hobbits, basically, and another sign that the world is a dangerous place that we then lose by Jackson removing Old Man Willow, or transplanting him in one sense.
The one thing I think we miss, for me, the most was, this is the first part where Sam's resilience is really shown, because he's the only one of the hobbits not affected, or he's the one that comes out of it the most, right? He can stand up to it more so than Frodo could, more so than Merry or Pippin.
Why do you think that is?
Well, he's the one that says, Sam sat down and scratched his head and yawned like a cavern. He was worried the afternoon was getting late, and he thought the sudden sleepiness uncanny. There's more behind this than sun and warm air, he muttered to himself. I don't like this great big tree. I don't trust it. Hark at it singing about sleep now. This won't do it all. He pulled himself to his feet and staggered off to see what had become of the ponies. He found the two had wandered on a good way along the path and had just caught them and brought them back towards the others. When he heard two noises, one loud and the other soft, but very clear. One was the splash of something heavy falling in the water. The other was a noise like the snick of a lock when a door quietly closes fast. So he's the one. He saves Frodo. Two, he's the one that essentially he's the one. He's the one, I believe, that says let's try a fire. Yep. And so he's the go-getter. He's the one who's taking action. And we kind of miss that with him. I mean, maybe you could say they try to fix that with what does he say? Something to Aragorn, put your dukes up, Longshanks, or
have at you, Longshanks.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thanks. I don't remember. I don't see the movie enough to know. But yeah, so I missed that part of it. It's Sam's first moment to really shine, and it's done in more so than just standing up for a friend. It's done because he's able to not be put under by the spell of Old Man Willow, by the wilds, by the sleep that's been singing to him in a way through the trees, right? That's what he says.
Right. I see it as his role as caretaker, like his job is to keep Frodo safe. And he's also got a bit of a suspicious nature, Sam does, except with regard to elves. Besides elves, he is naturally suspicious. He is indeed, even in the book, suspicious of Aragorn, and he's suspicious. That's true of people at different points. And it's his sort of cautious suspicion about everything, and seeing everything from the lens of, is this a danger to Frodo that enables him to push through? But you're right, his character and quality comes out in this scene. So we do miss that as well when you remove Old Man Willow. Yeah. Ultimately, Old Man Willow is not a big villain. He's there for one scene in the book, and that's it. I'm sure about that, by the way, because someone on our Discord called me on my comment that we never see, my throwaway comment that we never see Fatty Bulger again. And they pointed out that he made an appearance at the very end at the scouring of the Shire.
The prison, right?
Yeah, he comes out of prison, and he's thin, and he's no longer he's which is a kind of callback. And Tolkien likes doing that. Like that happened to Bomber at one point too. He came out thinner than he came in. I think it was the witch. I think it was the wood halls of the Elf King. But anyway,
let's get into the questions then.
Yep.
One, is it lore friendly to remove Old Man Willow?
Same yes as before. Same yes as with the Old Forest. It's fine. You don't lose out on anything, any major element of the story.
Yeah, agreed. All right. So next question: does the change make for better cinema?
Again, he's a throwaway character. They aren't going to care about him ever again, and he's not a core character to the book. So he's kind of a setup, a ramp up to the Old Forest. I'm sorry, he's a ramp up to Fangorn, is what he is, which is yeah. So I would say it makes for better cinema.
Yeah, I know. I hate to agree with you, but I do. I feel like I should be contrarian. This is so boring. I want to fight again about wizards battling the North End.
Well, there's going to be some changes we fight about, and some changes that are easy.
Yeah, I know.
We got hundreds of these, man.
Here's the thing: is again, you have a lot more time if you're to do this with more movies or a longer TV show, and you could have essentially an entire episode dedicated to the Old Forest and Old Man Willow. And at the end of it, you introduce Tom Bombadil, and then the next episode goes into that. So I think of that, and that to me is like, oh, that would have made for a better Lord of the Rings adaptation than this. But for the films, I can say yes, it does make for better cinema than adding it here. And okay, you can give a nod to the fans by putting it into Fangorn instead of here. And like you said, if pushed to it, then yeah, I would say Old Man Willow is closest to Huorn than anything else. But I do. It's always a reluctant yes to me for something like this. I just wish I would see it. All right. So next question: how much do you like the change? How much do you like the change of removing Old Man Willow? Now you were a 3 on removing the Old Forest, and you said that you couldn't have Old Man Willow if you already moved the Old Forest. But say that it would be possible. Let's try and not get bogged down that maybe there's a way to put Old Man Willow here, even though they don't have the whole Old Forest part of it. What would you think? How much do you like the change? You said it was an even 3, right? Right smack dab in the middle between 1 and 5.
Yeah, it was an even 3 because of for the reasons that you said. That I'm not. It's not that I. If you're going to take something out to make better cinema, taking Old Man Willow out is fine. I think you lose something a little bit because you're losing the story, but you don't lose enough that it changes much. In this case, removing Old Man Willow is something more interesting than just removing the Old Forest. So I like it a little less. So I'm going with 2.8.
All right. Agreed. It's there's more lost. There's more character development lost. There's an interesting. You start losing so much of the borders of the Shire and the danger around the Shire and a specific danger here. I'm going to go a little bit lower, and I'm going to say 2.5. Though it made for better cinema, I still don't like the change because
you miss Old Man Willow a little bit. He doesn't miss you.
No, he doesn't. He's got a black heart.
Indeed.
All right, everybody. Wow. 2.8, 2.5. We're holding firm on our desires to not like this film. Okay. So no, I'm joking, everybody. I do like
take him literally. I actually like the Lord of the Rings. We have to say this over and over again. I like the films as for what they are. So the extended editions. I consider the extended editions the real films. And I like them for what they are in cinema. And but as our job here is to point out that the book's way more awesome.
Yes, absolutely. However, speaking of these being the definitive edition, you will be able to see them in cinema again this June if you get your tickets.
Oh, I did not know that.
This was just announced yesterday or today. This is
okay.
On April 25th. It's coming out on Tuesday. We're recording a few days beforehand. So on this is if you go to Fathom Events, I'll put the link below in the show notes, but if you go to fathomevents.com/series/The Lord of the Rings Trilogy, or just search for it.
Wait, so how are they showing them? Is it 3 days or what is it?
It's over 3 days, June 8th, June 9th, and June 10th. The extended editions, the remastered ones that came out in 4K on whatever it's called, 4K. Is there a disc name for that? I don't even know. Anyway, came out in 4K 2 years ago, Christmases ago, I think it was. Maybe 3, I don't even remember. But yeah, this is the first time in theaters for the remastered 4K full digital editions that you can see on the big screen. So if you want to go see The Lord of the Rings, The extended editions in theaters June 8th, June 9th, and June 10th. Check out this link. And I would go as soon as possible because they're already getting pretty sold out right away. I don't understand why they only do one showing too. It's like one showing at 3 p.m. or 4 p.m. Really? That's it? Can't we do two? Could we do like a 3 p.m. and a 7 p.m. maybe 7:30? I might have to hook up with John Carswell of the Tolkien Road podcast to go see it because we couldn't see the.
Oh, that'd be cool. If we should totally do our thoughts and after that's over, do at least one episode where we review that with John and see what's occurred to us and was it good to watch it in the theaters or at least at this time. And
that's a good idea. Yeah,
20 years on, what do we think?
Totally do that. All right, everybody. So check that out. We're going to jump into our extended podcast, which you can get to by becoming a member at theonery.com/member or theonery.com/Patreon. You can join our Discord chat, which you got a glimpse of when we were talking about how our wonderful fans corrected us. I mean, they're wrong, but they corrected us. I was right about the whole like Gandalf staff thing. That was good to know. But we're a good bunch. We're not a crazy bunch, and I think you'll enjoy it. Right? We're a little laid back. You don't have to feel like you're missing out on conversations because we only speak when it's meaningful. So check us out, theonery.com/member. Let's jump into our extended podcast where we're going to talk about the Old Forest, evil in Middle Earth, what the meaning of forests is, and maybe jump into a little bit of Tom Bombadil. Maybe. We'll see. We'll try it out.
But you know who won't see that is the freeloaders. Bye-bye, freeloaders.